Back in high school, each Sunday night, I'd watch the practice with none of my friends. I'd turn the dial to ABC to see the creep of the week that Bobby Donald defends. But I'm out of practice.
With your hosts, Keith Barney.
Out of practice.
And Mike Andeglio.
Way back in high school, most every night, my mom watched QVC, so I missed the practice. There was no TiVo, what could I do? Wait 15 years, get fat, then stream it on Hulu. Out of
Get ready for a crossover!
Out of practice.
I guess I'm ready. You'll log in tow.
Out of practice.
And welcome to the Out of Practice podcast, a podcast that continues to talk about David E. Kelley's award-winning series, The Practice. Can you believe we are all the way up to season 5, episode 14, entitled The Day After? And it's been explosive on The Practice lately. How is life? Is life also exploding?
Yes, and I can't wait to share. This is a little bit of an actual true crime, not even back in time. We only have to go back a few hours.
What did you commit?
Nothing. So it's been pretty tranquil here in Pennsylvania in our little development since, as I've mentioned, we unwittingly, but sort of wittingly moved into a 55, 65 and up community.
Which is great.
Yeah, so last night we've been having an internal debate because we're not very loud people, but on occasion we've been hearing a little bit of banging from next door, like adjacent to our apartment. And I'm like,
Okay.
there's just no way we're being so loud that they're giving us the old dunk 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 dunk, like the
The old broom hitting the
yeah,
ceiling.
well basically that's just trigger from the New York days.
Right.
So anyway, last night we're hearing it again, and it's like loud. And then we hear screaming, like somebody saying, "Let me in! Let me in!"
Oh, fuck.
And it was real close. Like it was clearly the people next door. And we're like, ugh. And then next thing I know, Keith, there are 3 police cars that show up and 3 fire trucks. And we're
Ooh,
like, what
It's not
the hell?
good when there's both.
No. So in the New York days, I'd throw my shoes on, walk right out, and be like, what the hell's going on? Because I'm a nosy son of a bitch.
Sure.
But here,
sure.
it's a little different vibe. So we shut the lights off, and we
What?
open the bedroom windows, and we're eavesdropping.
I see. I thought you were like going to pretend that you weren't there, but
No.
it was really just to facilitate spying on folks.
Yes, and we really haven't uncovered it. Here's the facts as we know them. There was that man yelling, and then subsequent to that, when the police and the fire arrived, there was this woman outside in her skivvies weeping uncontrollably.
Oof.
They brought out a suitcase. A few firemen went in. A few firemen came out, and in 20 minutes, everybody left. So we sort of ruled out. I wouldn't be so flippant if I was to assume someone had passed away. That would be pretty
Right.
shitty of me. I think it was just a straight up domestic or something.
Yikes.
So,
Yeah, it's so funny, like how privileged we are to be so like upset about something like that, because that happens all the time, and it's like, oh my god, that's
well, speaking of privilege, like
Yeah.
generally speaking, in the city or in most places, I should say, you call 911 for something like that, you're lucky if anybody shows up. Here,
Right.
3 cop cars and 3 full fire engines, like that is the whole cavalry showed up.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I mean, I'm glad. I mean, that's good. That is something to be taken seriously.
true.
And
Well,
On it.
let's flip the tables, Keith. When,
Yeah.
if, how, are you moving? Do you have a house?
Oh, my Lord.
We need to know.
Yes. Well, I forget where exactly we were in the process last week, but I have a feeling it was probably similar to where we were this week. The continuing saga has continued. If you have been listening ahead of time, you knew that my wife and I were buying a house, and it got delayed 1,000 times. But the last delay was because one of the sellers, their grandfather, who was still on the deed, had passed away, and so we were waiting for paperwork from the town. And they were like, it's going to be forever because of COVID. And we got news last week that it was going to come last week. It hasn't yet. It was supposed to come Friday. We're hoping it's going to come today and finalize everything. But we look like we will be closing next week. So unfortunately, not before the holiday, but probably the Tuesday after the holiday, we should be closing and moving, assuming nothing else goes wrong, which of course, at this point, I assume everything will go wrong.
Yeah, that's a tough assumption.
Because right now we're inventing new things to go wrong. Like new and exciting things are happening that have never happened before to delay this process. And I think we put the offer on the house in like September, and it is now the end of December. Insane. But yeah, hopefully.
Well, I have to say, I got a little taste of where you've been for the past 12 years. We've been doing this podcast. This morning, CEO Jen over coffee is asking me, I guess she's quite a little bit behind, and she's like, so I guess Mr. Hinks has a bunch of episodes left. And I was like,
yeah, see, there it is. No spoilers.
Yep.
No spoilers. Yeah. How exciting. She's just like in the beginning of Hinks, right?
Yeah, but she did get to the episode where you tried to tee up a joke about a hamster wheel. Remember we were talking American Gladiators, and
right. Yes.
She found it as asinine as I did, which I appreciated.
Look, they're not all winners. They're not all winners.
That's true.
You know, we talk for like 2.5 hours live on camera, no editing, no sleep.
Yeah, last week was 2 hours and 20 minutes, which is absolutely absurd.
We're gonna do it better today. I promise we're not.
That is a promise we promise not to keep.
We promise not to keep, but we will move forward with the show and bring up filings and subpoenas. Filings and subpoenas. Filings and subpoenas. Filings and subpoenas.
What say you?
Well, here's what we say. I'm going to remember again this week to early in the show tell you not just what you filed and subpoenaed, but how you can do it. You can reach us at Out of Practice Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. You can email us outofpracticepodcast@gmail.com and check out our blog, outofpracticepodcast.blogspot.com. Do us a huge favor. It would really, really help if you would leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you can join the jury. It doesn't even have to be good. We have a good record thus far, but you can trash us, and even that will help us. So maybe if you want to trash us, you don't want to help us. Whatever it is, reach out. We really appreciate it. Okay. Well, so we have a couple of things to talk about. First off, our good friend and founding sponsor, Jorge Navoa, has done so much this week. It's mind-blowing, all the things that he has done this week. He has given us both assignments, so we will be turning in our work this very episode.
Spoiler alert, I'm sure Keith did better than me.
But also, he tracked down multiple original practice scripts, including the one that Linda was about to scan for us. Now we have that one too. Which we're so excited to dive into at some point. And I surprised Mike with this last week, but we're going to do some sort of a special episode where we can analyze the script versus what actually happened. I started working, but just reading through it and watching the episode and seeing all the changes between the first draft.
Yeah, I feel like if we're going to do it, we need to do it right and like juxtapose some of the clips versus.
Yeah. We may just decide to take our YouTube strike and show the episode in the page of the script. We'll see. But it's really fascinating. It's remarkable how so much of it is still contained from the first draft, but also like first draft also includes F-bombs, which clearly David E. Kelley just put in there for his own entertainment because he knew he was never going to make it on the show.
That's funny.
So Jorge did that. Jorge also, a lot of people have heeded my desperate call for help on the Gideon's Crossing crossover, which is not available anywhere, the episode of Gideon's Crossing. But so we have from Jorge, he tracked down one of the original commercials that aired teasing the episode, which actually,
to be fair, I tracked that down as well.
You did as well, but it's your podcast. Jorge did it of his own volition.
That's true.
And it was an impressive find and an impressive pull. So we will definitely play that. The other thing that Jorge found was a detailed episode recap written by a blogger at that time, which will at least we will be able to break down scene by scene what happens if we can't find the episode in that journey. So we will be able to do something on that episode if we don't find the actual video.
I suppose we have to. So just to let our fellow internet sleuths know, Keith and I are no strangers. Well, younger Keith and I should say, are no strangers to the darker sides of the web. We came up in the Napster days.
Let's make that let's be very specific about what you're talking about.
Yeah, stuff that falls off the back of a truck. We're talking Napster. I mean, we've been there since the beginning of our younger selves.
We're talking like Marvel movies, okay? We're not.
Maybe not. I mean, like knockoff C movies, like Hallmark Christmas.
The Hallmark movies.
Yeah. That's it. Anyway, so we even went down to the which I knew existed, but I didn't know how deep it went. The VHS Internet Archive, which I'll put in the show notes because it's basically people uploading hundreds of thousands of hours of just like tapes they found in their house that are just like running long play and then cataloging it per minute.
Oh, cool.
So if you like want to find a Folgers commercial that aired for one Christmas in 1987, it may be on there. It's incredible. So in searching all the tags for various actors in Gideon's Crossing itself, Gideon's Crossing / The Practice crossover, all kinds of searching, the best you can find is one ABC promo that aired about the special one-night crossover event during commercials of something else somebody was taping. So we got that. But we've gone down a deep well is where I'm getting. The last thing I could come up with is we could spam actors who were in Gideon's Crossing and be like, do you have a copy of this? And like some miracle world, they would write us back.
I have been told under good authority that was probably not worth the effort.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
But
who's that?
I don't know.
What does that even mean? Who told you that?
Well, look, I think it was Jorge implied that the show was not terrific.
Okay.
So there it is, and that the storyline that happens is a little bit of filler. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much to Jorge and Richard, because we are going to be able to do something as opposed to have a giant hole in our series. You know what I totally did? I forgot to check if we had any YouTube comments today.
We did. We for sure did. I don't have them available, but I can tell you that it's worth your time. In fact, as Keith's doing that. Okay.
Actually, it's Jorge again. Oh, but do you think?
I was just going to say that when we get to that episode, rather, especially if we don't have it to watch and it sounds like it's not worth it, what will be worth it is we'll throw on a TV overlay, we'll throw on some VHS squigglies, and we'll have Keith just dramatically read the recap. I think that will be, I don't want to say entertaining, but I'll say, good
Yeah,
enough.
well, as is much of what I do on this podcast, it's like cold reading. It's like, how well does Keith read? Is he literate? Can he speak written words as written in front of him that he's never read before? Which is 3/4 of what I do, including right now. So on last episode, Jorge says, theory as to the head in the freezer. I don't think David E. Kelley wrote it in as something that would make sense for the character to do, so much as to let the audience know he's dead. Because as we all know, characters can always come back from the dead unless you chop off their head. That sounds like an Obama thing. Because we all know characters can always come back from the dead unless you chop off their head.
Or as was said better by Yip Harburg, not only is he nearly dead, he's really quite sincerely dead.
Sincerely dead. Yes, indeed. Although, yes, you're 100% right. I wish, though, that the dead head that they had used looked anything like Michael Emerson. It was clearly just one they had sitting in the warehouse at Paramount. They're like, yeah, whatever, just turn it the other way. He's balding. Yeah, don't worry about it. Just put the face the other way. Like, well, we'll believe he's dead. So they kind of undercut their own idea there.
Real quick aside,
Yeah.
Remind me, last week's episode, and even previous to that, the hitman that Bobby didn't hire. Let's be clear.
Right.
The deal he struck, he wasn't granted immunity, right? He just took a lesser charge?
No, he got 3rd degree.
Okay.
So he basically was a manslaughter.
Wow. Okay, so a man was murdered. Granted, he was a serial killer, but he was murdered
Right.
and decapitated, and the best someone will serve for that is probably
Like
couple
3 to
years.
5.
all right. Well,
Yeah, well, look, sometimes the wheels of justice. Anyway, so Jorge continues about continuing the Bobby's up for murder storyline. He says, as for the verdict, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the episode yet. If you're watching this, you've seen the episode. I agree with everything you said about the verdict, but if you strip away everything we know as viewers and look at the case strictly from a juror's point of view, you step into the courtroom and see defendant, soon to be Dilfy Donnell. You hear about what William Hinks did and was threatening to do. Then you weigh in on Alan's rap sheet. The idea of telling 8-month pregnant Lindsay, sorry you're raising your baby on your own because of some dumb law. Yeah, pretty sure if I were on that jury, I would have nullified the shit out of those charges. Note, I actually think the felony murder rule is beyond fascinating. However, most people I've mentioned to it had no idea it exists. Mentioned it too, had no idea it exists, and usually don't agree with it. Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think the felony murder law is kind of ridiculous and there are ways in which I think it makes sense to apply, but it feels like something rife with the opportunity for abuse. So, my feeling that he would be found guilty or that I would find him guilty is really only from the perspective of the letter of the law, not necessarily judging whether I agree with the law itself.
actually, while I've had the week to kind of mull on it, and I have, because because I'm chewing, like, where does Bobby sit with me right now? Like, it's his whole character is
soon to be Dilfy Donnell.
Yeah, I have a weird taste in my mouth about it, and I think for me, it's that they chose in order to make us more sympathetic to Bobby. They chose to really focus more on how the prosecution was trying to stick it to him for other reasons, rather than what Jorge highlights. If they had focused on pushing a case of jury nullification, I'm protecting my soon-to-be or my pregnant wife. We're focusing on the serial killer aspect. We're focusing on the other guy's rap sheet.
Right.
All of the things Jorge highlighted, I would have been much more at ease with the way the jury went. And I'm sure that in the metaverse of the show, they did push that case more than we saw. But I just felt like the highlight, what they chose to present to us, was a little bit blurry.
Yeah, well, I think there was, I think you're absolutely right, because you had the angle of what I was saying a couple episodes ago about like defense of others' defense. But also, the other thing you could argue is the injustice, the unfairness of that law itself. If you want to make the episode
Right.
about whether or not the felony murder law is a just law, that's also more interesting than sort of what they did. So Phoenix, moderator Phoenix, joins in and says, Jorge, absolutely. Keith is so certain that they would have convicted because technically he was guilty of breaking this weird law that basically says, since you told one guy to intimidate another guy, you're guilty of murder because you started a chain of dominoes. You're right. No jury would convict because of some technicality they've never heard of. One of the side benefits of having a jury of people who aren't normally part of the legal system is that they won't fixate on legal minutia when it would interfere with justice. Yeah, fair enough. Although, my experience as a juror, you are specifically told to fixate on the legal minutia. That is sort of your job as a juror, but you're also right that the other part of your job is to sort of ensure justice. Interesting discussion, and I wish that they'd had more of it on the show.
Yeah, we talked about this ad nauseum in the jury nullification one of the first times it popped up, but it still sticks out to me, I should say, that they're so specific in jury trials that here's the laws you need to be judging this case against. And at times they'll say, well, forget you saw that, forget you heard this, do not let that enter your mind. When in reality, no human being can do that, right? We're not robots that you can just extract information. And so, well, and I guess that's checked by the fact that judges can nullify certain or override certain convictions or sentences. So I guess the checks and balances continue. Look, we're living through a bunch of checks and balances in the court system as we speak, not to get into it, but just to say, for a while, and the way we live right now, people like to refute facts by presenting their own non-facts and just citing them as
facts.
And we're seeing that the judicial system, and look, it is filled with flawed individuals, as we've seen on the show, as we've seen in real life. On both sides of the aisle, there are flawed people wearing robes. But that said, that's the last line of defense from some really weird, shitty stuff happening. And so, Kittleson might be crossing out the eyes of people left and right, but we still need her to do her job when she's got that robe on. Indeed. And we know how much she likes to take that robe off. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, snap. All right. Well, let us continue this conversation. But let us continue this conversation 19 years ago by hopping back into the time machine. Oh, wait, no, that's not true. We have a segment I don't have a bumper for entitled...
Do we do that first?
Back in time. True crime. I didn't know what order we were doing this in, so just give me a minute. I've got to keep talking in this voice. There we go.
Talking in this voice.
All right, now let me pull up the
Back
email
in
with my
time,
notes.
true
Because
crime.
Jorge did a lot of work, and I don't want to disrespect it. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Ooh, look at that. Fun.
So
I think that's a little further back in time.
Yeah, well, speaking of, this has no real tie to the actual date and time where this episode aired, which is generally the sort of way we do things. But you recall that last week we were discussing a case that revolved around who we've come to learn as Dylan McDermott, and he was at a V-Day benefit for his stepmom, Eve Ensler, and we learned all about the case of his actual mother who had passed away under suspicious circumstances years ago. And we're going to, a quick recap here. Days before that V-Day benefit, in a interview with the Hartford Courant in Hartford, Connecticut, he spoke about his feelings towards his hometown and how he loves putting up Christmas tree with his daughters. And it brought back a lot of childhood memories, Keith. And as we've learned, that childhood and those memories is kind of scarred. And he learned how to turn internal poison into medicine, which is what he does for us week to week on The Practice. During that same visit to his hometown where he did that interview, he met with police superintendent Michael Gugliotti. And the two went over that very scarring incident back February 5th, 1967. Now, that superintendent, and they discussed the 20-year-old Diane McDermott that night that she was taken away. Now, Chief Inspector Henry Burns was the lead investigator on this case, okay? Here's what happened. He went to the scene, Keith. He interviewed Diane's boyfriend, John Sponza, who was 23 at the time, who said that she had shot herself with his .32 caliber when he set it down. Remember, she was peeling potatoes?
Right.
And he also affirmed that they had rarely, if ever, had arguments. So with that, and with that only, that initial investigation, Burns ruled the death an accidental homicide, or an accidental death, despite, like we discussed at the end of last week, the angle of the gunshot entering through her head through the left side, even though she was right-handed. He closed the case without follow-up investigation. Closed. Never looked into it not being a suicide. Never looked into her not being suicidal. Did not question why her 5-year-old son, our buddy Dylan, was locked outside during the incident on a freezing February day in New England. None of that was even covered. All right? So 44 years later, Dylan McDermott is now telling Gugliotti that when he was a child, he had memories of Sponza holding a gun to his own head.
Oh,
and
shit.
that was confirmed by Diane's best friend, the mother's best friend. Sharon tells how John Sponza constantly was yelling at Dylan, pinched him, hit him, abused him, even stuck a gun in his face. Finally, he stopped when the friend threatened to have her convict husband kill him if he ever touched Dylan again, or Mark Anthony at the time.
Crazy.
That didn't stop the abuse against his mother, Diane, which witnesses say humiliated her, beat her, made her expose herself sexually in front of his friends, choked her when she didn't get his cigarettes fast enough. So already this raises so many red flags to me, because you go to a murder scene or you go to an accidental shooting, and this is a person who has a rap sheet for physical abuse, for verbal abuse, and it gets worse. So already with Dylan relitigating these facts with the now police inspector, Gugliotti reopens the case. So in 2001, here's the new information we learn.
Okay.
The case is now reassigned to a Detective Richard Baxter and Gary Pelosi. They interview associates who tell them that Sponza assaulted them for minor disagreements, sucker punched people from behind. They speak to a former employee at the Waterbury Country Club, had to fire him 20 minutes on the job for fighting with caddies. A former girlfriend testifies that he pushed her to the ground right before he started dating her friend, Diane McDermott. So then he had an ex-wife who says he hit me several times. There was a day came he didn't trust me. He said he would kill me. So it's clear this man is not a good guy. They look back into his criminal history. He had stints in and out of jail, breaking and entering, drug possession, larceny, robbery, heavily addicted to cocaine and heroin. Was the main suspect, Keith, get ready for this. Now, none of this was investigated initially. Main suspect in a murder of Harold Unsworth, who was 27-year-old, whose body was found in the trunk of Sponza's mother's car with 38 caliber gunshots the week before Diane was found with that .32 pistol.
You're kidding. God.
Baxter and Pelosi, the new investigators, re-examined the autopsy, which confirmed the bullet angle, proved not accidental, proved entry was too large to be caused by a .32 and likely fired by, go figure, a .38.
Yeah.
Showed no gunpowder residue on either hand. They determined Henry Byrne, this is the original prosecutor or investigator, failed to test John Sponza for gunpowder residue. Likely covered up his involvement in the murder. Was one of the many officials under investigating for stolen goods rings and was fired 2 years after in 1969, along with the deputy superintendent. Jorge goes on to provide a bunch of other research he did about ways that the Waterbury town and police department was likely very corrupt. I'm gonna just skip past that. I'll include in the show notes for anybody who's interested in further reading. So, after all this, which was clearly a botched investigation, there's an assumption that maybe that initial investigator was actually involved in the crime, perhaps. Let's find out, before we get to how the investigation was concluded, let's find out what ends up happening to John Sponza. He continued a life of crime during all these years, not being convicted of anything. In 1972, he and 3 other men stole 2 safes from a bank. He lured them to a secluded woods and to divide the contents. Once parked, he shot them all. 1 escaped, 1 was grazed by a bullet, but the 3rd was killed. Sponza takes off. He flees. Crashes his Cadillac. He rents a Dodge Charger. The car was found a week later in a parking lot of a supermarket. Before approaching, officers smelled horrible odor. Jimmy's the trunk. Inside was bloody, week-old dead body of 28-year-old John Sponza. This happened in Massachusetts, just 11 miles northwest of Boston. So Sponza is dead and will never be held accountable for his escapes. But let's see what the conclusion of all this is. Though assumed 2 surviving double-crossed bank robbers were responsible, John Sponza's murder was never officially solved. A murder that was solved almost 40 years later was the one that he committed. Thanks to Dylan McDermott, Diane McDermott's son, her death has since been changed from accidental death to a homicide. So, Dylan McDermott does certainly turn his poison into medicine. During an interview at Christmas in 2010, Gigliotti asked why Dylan wanted to solve this murder after all these years, even though Sponza was dead. Dylan's response, "In order for me to survive and to get where I am today, I needed to bury that moment in my life deep within myself. But it wasn't until recently that I've come to a point in my life where I'm able to begin the process of all of this and make it part of my life and provide some closure." So, here was a murder that would have just gone, look, Sponza got the ultimate justice, right? If you believe in an eye for an eye, or even if not, he got what was coming to him. But he never stood trial for this murder. He was never even accused of this murder. If it weren't for Dylan needing that closure and for pursuing it, it never would have been closed. So, it really does make me open my eyes to a lot of the performances Dylan has given and will continue to give. Because that is something, look, we talk about this often. The death of my dad of natural causes has colored almost every experience I've had subsequently. So to think that Dylan as an actor in such an intense role has this well of emotion to pull on is just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And it certainly, one of the things that you said in there was that his mother or their family friend intimidated, called in basically a hitman to intimidate this guy and say, "Don't touch Dylan," which was basically the storyline of that Dylan just went through.
Absolutely.
Which is really fascinating. Wow.
That's clever. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I wonder how much of this David E. Kelley knew. And how much of this might have influenced storylines. Well,
yeah, you never know. A quick aside, and I'm going to be very careful at how I phrase this. In recent times, I took part in a reading of a show that was kind of like a campy slasher flick type of thing, and it was also whodunit, and the eventual person who committed was the maniac. Turns out to be twins, right? It was one actress playing twin sisters. One was a good sister, and one was like a psychopathic killer.
Sure.
And she really sunk her teeth into it, and we come to learn time later that, unbeknownst to any of the writers of the show or any of the casting, anything like that, this actress had a twin sister who had passed away in some sort of had passed away. And so, you just never know how close to home you're getting at times, especially,
Yeah.
when you're anyway, it's acting and performing is such a legitimate art, but also a sort of metaphysical sort of universe,
Yeah. Interesting. Very, and of course, like anytime you're performing something, you're bringing to it all of your lived experiences, and especially when you're dealing with something dramatic or you're dealing with a traumatic moment that you're playing on stage, like you don't know what that
Right.
person has been through personally, and what their relationship with that is, and that's something that I always have to sort of keep an eye on with my work, because it's like I don't know if this, because a lot of times you're casting from your friends, but sometimes you're not. Sometimes you need somebody that you like, a type that you don't have in your friend area, and you don't know what their experiences are, and it's something to keep in mind. All right, what we need to do is to keep in mind moving forward with the show and hopping back in the time machine for real this time, back to February 11th, the year 2001. And ask the eternal question, Mike, what were you doing
This day in the basement?
Well, Keith, I can tell you. But first, I want to close a chapter that I've been circling around and around. I keep talking about that first contract I signed at Delaware City Theater Company to play The Young Thing in Hello Again, my first professional contract. I thought maybe it was around this time. As we've mentioned ad nauseum at this point, my brain is a collective shatter of memories. But
Right.
I found it.
Oh, you
I
did?
actually found it.
Fantastic.
And I am one entire year late. So
As
let me pull
happens.
it up.
As happens.
That's not it. Let me pull it up. Here it is. Here she is. You'll find this is the letter of agreement, which is
Oh.
dated.
March 21st, 2000.
There you go. For performances that end up being between April and May of 2000. So I am 1 year late to the party.
Look at that.
And look, a whopping $400 for the entire run.
But
it's-
it is proof of being a professional actor.
If not now, at least then. I really thought the world was my oyster at that point. However, jumping ahead, I was auditioning for Right Now. I had auditioned, so I was with my current girlfriend at the time, and we had done a production of Pippin, as I've mentioned a bunch of times.
Right.
And Pippin is closed at this point, and I believe it was this past summer, and we are still together and auditioning together for a play at the Dutch Country Players in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
No, I've
Which
heard
is-
of them. I think I might have auditioned for them once or twice over the years.
A play called Tribute, which I knew literally nothing about, other than the fact that there was two parts that my girlfriend and I could play together, which was sort of what we were
Fun. Yeah.
shooting for. It would come to pass that I would book it and she would not.
Oh, no.
And I would also come to find, Keith, that the play was about, and literally I got the job, accepted it, and didn't even read the play. So I show up
Makes sense.
to day one and they pass out the scripts and I go home and we, meet and greet and whatever. And the girl playing opposite me was cute. So I was like, that's good. Now this is early on, but that's really what was important, right? Are there cute girls in the cast?
Obviously. I mean, why else do musical theater?
This was not musical theater. This was a straight play.
Yeah.
Yep. By somebody Shaw, not Bernard Shaw, but another Shaw.
George Shaw.
Maybe. I should know. I should have looked that up. Anyway, not important. What I come to find is that it revolves around a man, Scotty, who finds out that he is diagnosed with leukemia and dying of leukemia and decides he wants to reconnect with and come to terms with his sort of estranged son, Judd, me. And so the universe sent me a play about a son and a father trying to initialize a relationship under the knowledge that the father's dying, which, Keith, it turns out was the exact situation I found myself in. And the show will open the weekend after my father dies. And I'll never forget, I sat down with the director and the cast, and they were like, look, we will absolutely, this is way before understudies and stuff. This is early on days.
Right.
And they're like, we'll push the entire run a week or two, as much time as you need. And I remember saying, no, let's do it. And we did it. And I did this whole run of the show, like in the direct aftermath of my dad dying. And it was probably one of the biggest challenges / greatest sort of, it was really important. And I end up the girl I played opposite with, which I could get into this later, but here we are. Her name was Summer Hayes, which is kind of an awesome name, which it dawns on me now that maybe she was using a sort of stage name, because that's really clever. And she ended up, not only did my dad die, but my girlfriend and I had broken up, and it was really kind of a shitty time. And she was such a good friend to me during this. And I would just hang out at her house because I didn't want to be in my house. And she was obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show. So we just like watched Buffy all the time and just hung out. And I don't know where she is. I've tried to find her I can't locate her. She's just kind of poof. So she exists as sort of like a Jiminy Cricket, a Rebecca Cricket in my life, just someone who was there and has subsequently poofed. And so that was, I was auditioning for Tribute, which would turn out to be a pretty fundamental portion of my life. Keith, let's go over to you. What were you doing this day in the basement?
Well, that's a crazy story, and it's funny how performing in a situation like that can either make things 1,000 times worse or 1,000 times better, like depending on what you need in the moment. Do you need to work through those things, or do you need a break from those things? And very interesting. And
for me,
and
it was
course,
like I need to be doing something, because for me in life, it's like when I'm sitting in stillness with quiet, and I can't, man. That's where I go. I need to be doing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And and technically, on the title of the play, or the author of the play, you were half right, half wrong. You were saying it wasn't Bernard Shaw, but it was a Shaw. Wrong. It wasn't Shaw, but it was a Bernard. It was Bernard Slate.
Okay, there we go. Well,
Okay, well, there it is. Interesting. All right, well, far less intense. I was at Eastman, and my folks came to visit. Here's a picture of, this was up in the opera studio up on the 12th floor at Eastman there. I think we were doing scenes maybe from West Side. Forget what it was, but those are my parents and my girlfriend who came to visit me there. We had a lovely weekend, and that's my parents in the Eastman dorms. We had a lovely meal at Dinosaur Barbecue.
Oh, love
Rochester.
me the Dinosaur Barbecue.
Oh, it's so good. I went back, actually the first time I actually went back to school, or went back to Eastman a couple of years ago with my friend Derek. We went back to Dinosaur, and it was like, oh God, why didn't I go to this every night? But as you can see from the pictures there, I'd already eaten some barbecue, so I didn't need to have any more.
Before stretchy jeans.
It was before I was like rocking the mom jeans and the polo. It was perfect. But it's basically, I've pretty much the same. Like, it's funny how little I've changed since there, for better and worse. I'm pretty much the same guy.
I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, well, consistency. Like, I'm happier. My brain works better. All right, it is time for...
It's time for the Out of Practice Podcast's This Day in the World. The greatest hits, the biggest movies, headlines from Vermont, essential sports updates, and for some inexplicable reason, the weather from 20 years ago. Now back to Keith and Mike.
We are talking about February 11th, the year 2001. the top hit was a new one.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Miss Jackson, Outcast.
Right here goes out to all my ladies' mamas.
And this is a 10-year-old covering it.
Mamas, mama.
Forever, ever?
My ladies' mamas, mama.
What? He's 10?
So, he's like 10. He's like this
Okay. Well,
little 10-year-old rapper who's done his whole he's done a whole video. You should definitely check it out, folks, if you go on the YouTubes.
this made Outkast blow up.
Yeah. The top movie was Hannibal, which I noticed that CBS All Access is redoing Silence of the Lambs as a series, as if that series has not been done
Series
into
is
oblivion.
yeah.
Like, Silence of the Lambs was already done. Silence of the Lambs was a remake of
That's nuts.
that movie, and then they did like 700 increasingly bad sequels to it. But now we're doing a TV show. All right, thank you very much. All right, so the local paper, I have a new impromptu back in time true crime. Give me the bumper.
All right, hold on. Wait. Back in time. I have to be prepared for these things because when I don't prepare, back in time. True crime.
Okay. The local paper, Burlington Free Press, said hope fades for survivors of collision with submarine. And what had happened was the U.S. sub USS Greenville collided with a Japanese fishery high school training ship just off the coast of Hawaii. In a demonstration for civilian VIPs in the sub, he did an emergency ballast blow, which causes the submarine to surface rapidly, and it collided with the ship, sinking it in 10 minutes. It killed 9 people, 4 high school students, 2 teachers, and 3 crew
Jesus.
members. Several of the bodies were not recovered until the following October when they raised the ship. Now, Commander Scott Waddell was in command of the sub, obviously, but he avoided a full court-martial but he was forced to retire, but with an honorable discharge. And so, can you believe he got away essentially murdering 9 people?
Was there a reason why he did the emergency ballast blow?
He was showing off for civilian VIPs.
Oh, shit.
He was literally just like, I don't know who was there, like Sean Connery, and like, hey, check this out.
Huh.
And
That sucks.
killed a bunch of high school kids.
Huh?
Yeah, right? So there it is. Scott Waddell. We haven't
go.
forgotten.
No, and
Yeah,
we won't.
No, and you know what's weird is I actually kind of remember that. So it was big news back in February of 2011. But what was bigger news was
It's time for Sportsball.
It's time to switch over to the NHL, where the 2000-2001 season is already underway. The Boston Bruins blew out the Tampa Bay Lightning 6-2 in a delightfully chippy game. Matthew Barnaby fought Andrei Nazarov on the opening faceoff. I couldn't find the clip, but don't worry, 2 weeks later on the opening faceoff, the exact same thing happened, so stay tuned. But meanwhile, later in the game, this happened. Oh, so fun. I can't hear it. That's all right. I remember. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that was Bill Guerin, who was defending a teammate in the third period against the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Bruins, of course, were wearing their horrible yellow jammies outfits, which are no longer there. But Guerin was a big star. But this game was chippy from the opening faceoff in those original Tampa Bay Lightning uniforms there in Boston Garden, which was at that point known as the Fleet Center. Oh, I love it. I miss old time hockey so much. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a strike for this because this is the NHL and not the NFL. And this was broadcast on Nessun, which is a local regional sports network. Anyway, yeah, so that's the fact that in a hockey game, what happened there, and this happens sometimes when there's like a beef going on with the teams, the
the ref will drop the puck for the opening faceoff, and everybody will ignore it and just start fighting, which they knew was going to happen there because Matthew Barnaby was a rat, and so it's just like, all right, we're just going to fight to begin the game, and then we'll worry about hockey later. So there it is, Phoenix. I gave you a clip again, so I will try to find us clips that won't get us strikes. Now, the last thing we're gonna do is talk about
Weather.
Can you tell me the weather? 'Cause we all need to know. Was it hot or did it snow? Tell me the weather from 21 years ago.
Keith, you thought you'd catch me unawares, but actually, though I don't have any specifics, I will tell you that I'll never forget that during the audition for Tribute, which was what my This Day in the Basement was the first time ever that I had gotten my car stuck in the snow.
Oh, no kidding.
It was a muddy, gravelly driveway, and I parked, and by the time I came out, I spun my tires, and I couldn't get out, and a very nice man in a truck with chains actually attached it to the underside of my front-wheel drive car and pulled me out. And that reminds me that you probably dealt with that all the time back in your day.
Oh, goodness, yes. No, getting stuck in the snow and the mud and the ice. Yeah, no, that is a very familiar sensation for me. Oh, you know, if I can find it, actually at Eastman during one of the snowstorms in Rochester, there was this guy, there's a parking lot behind our dorm room, and this guy trying to get his car out of the snow, and just listening to him freak out. And by the end, he was just like screaming expletives. It was so much fun. Anyway, I've recorded some of it. If I can find it, I'll play it on air, but I doubt I can. Anyway.
I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
It's time to talk about the damn episode.
Okay, folks, we are finally here. Sorry to your thumb skipping through all of that nonsense we just talked about. And we are here to talk about The Practice, Season 5, Episode 14, The Day After. This was written by David E. Kelley and directed by Alex Graves, one of our favorite directors. Sadly, this is the last episode that Alex will direct of The Practice. He was moving on to being an EP on The West Wing before Game of Thrones and such. All right, it is February 2001. It is Sweeps Week. And that makes us really wonder.
What is that supposed to mean?
What's your problem?
Is this what happens to women when you insert your penis?
What?
What?
What does Mike think's gonna happen?
You know, what if he would have drank the curdled milk? Then what would have happened?
Well, let's not forget we blowed up the office last week.
We did blowed up the office, yes.
And so clearly there is cleanup that must take place. Now, the day after most easily refers to the day after the blow up, one would assume, but that's too easy for the season of big swings.
Big swings, big sweeps.
So look, we've had almost every season somebody end up in the hospital. That's not even a big swing anymore. But this week, I think both Rebecca and Lucy are in the hospital. And not only that, one of them needs a transplant.
Ooh, okay.
And it will come down to who in the office, because it can only be someone from the office that has to follow through with the transplant. But there's a problem with that, Keith, because
okay, all right.
Two of our members are pregnant. So clearly they can't do the transplant.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and guess that Rebecca is the one that is most crucially injured, and that Lucy, even though they're both in the hospital, Lucy will provide Rebecca something vital, a kidney maybe, something like that, to catalyze her recovery.
Well, if she needs a head transplant, I know where we have one on ice.
Good one.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Funny. Ah, they all work. All the
So
jokes
if you
work.
want to know how wrong I was, you can do so by clicking this QR code right here on the screen, or, just like continuing to listen to the podcast that you're probably on, because it doesn't seem like anybody watches this on YouTube.
Nobody watches it.
But Keith and I are going to drop as many F-bombs as possible this episode just to get those sweeps week bump up. And we'll see you for the oopsies. And we are back, baby.
Woo! Baby got babied.
Wow, there was a lot happening in that.
A lot. Yeah, that was an action-packed episode with so many things, and we need to discuss it. But before we discuss it, Mike has to tell us what happened.
Mike has 30 seconds to remember what just happened on the show. It's Sweet Week, baby, and everybody's pregnant. Rebecca got blowed up. Lucy did too, but she's back at work. Rebecca's in the hospital. Her mom comes. She's like, hey, she's a Jehovah's Witness. You cannot give her blood. Bobby's like, we gotta give her blood. So they go to court. And Bobby's like, yo, this is some voodoo. But also, she had an abortion. She did this. She did that. She's not a Jehovah's Witness. Her mom's like, yeah, but she is. Bush League Linda Hunt's like, yeah, she's right. She doesn't get the blood. So now, Lindsay has the baby with her mom. And she doesn't have an umbilical cord. And now Rebecca's still in a coma. And stuff happened with Boston. And Boston Public happened.
And we crossed over with another show.
30 seconds, man.
30 seconds. No. All right. Wow. So, yeah. Let's throw out some awards, shall we? In a segment
Ladies
we
and
call
the Out of Practice Podcast, in unofficial, unsolicited, unfactual association with David E. Kelly Productions, proudly present
Oopsie.
The Oopsies! Celebrating excellence in acting good, lawyering good, guesting good, and being Tom Brady. Not to mention, this is where we rate the episode and stuff. Now, here are your hosts, Keith and Mike.
What the hell are the oopsies?
Well, I'll tell you, Jackie, they are a fake award show that we do at the end of every episode of The Practice because Lord knows we need more awards. Let's start with Most Valuable.
Oh, that's me.
That's you, yeah.
Sometimes Keith, value is in our hearts. And for me, it was nice to see Bobby Donnell lawyering with high stakes for someone he cares about and someone who deserves it. And that's Rebecca. He wasn't calling her religion bull crap. He was just saying that she should be given the benefit. She should be given the benefit to make that decision on her own. And he did it. He did all of this hours after coming out of prison. And whilst his wife was still getting ready to baby, and his best buddy was in the hospital, and the office had to be blown up. So that's quite a bit of value packed into a 24 hours work for Bobby Donnell. So I'm going to give my vote to Bobby Donnell, even though he lost. But in doing so, he reclaimed a little bit of my respect, which he's been hemorrhaging lately.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think we're going to do a reverse of what we normally do, where I'm usually the one arguing against, even though they lost, they did the good effort. And I think that Bobby, up until the point of the slip, did a tremendous job. But that mistake really fucked him. But you know who came in with the clothes and actually won the case with a really won the case to kill her own daughter, but it worked, is Helene Washington. I gotta give it to CCH Pounder. I mean, she got her own closing time. She's not a lawyer, but she made it happen and she won the case. So for me, I gotta give it to Helene Washington. So congratulations, Helene Washington and Bobby Donnell with your MVP. else. Coming up next, kind of an obvious one.
Already famous cause you've been on TV, getting a paycheck, or the first entry on your IMDb. Way to go, but you're the best guest actor. You are the best guest actor. You are the best guest actor on the episode.
Kids, how many of you are doing the choreography at home? That's the question.
You know, it's never out of my mind that we're complete idiots, but sometimes it dawns on me just the extent of idiots that we are.
We have been talking for like 2.5 fucking hours at this point for no reason.
It dawns on me.
Whatsoever.
It dawns on me, Keith, that we had a whole crossover episode, and none of these people will be winning an OOPSY.
That's true.
Because I believe we're going to be unanimous on Pounder here, and
yeah,
she did her own lawyering. She was able to be sympathetic, even in the face in the fact that it might cause one of our favorite characters to die. And it's tough too because, you know, you've got to heighten those stakes, even though the audience probably doesn't actually think Rebecca's going to die.
Right.
You know? So that's a tough, well, we'll talk more about that when we get to tires. I just think not only did she didn't steal every scene she was in, she rightfully earned every scene she was in and then delivered a baby. So that's my vote.
Yeah, I mean, the word I would give for what she did there was grounded and very sort of, you know, like I said before, like CCH Pounder has such gravitas just as a person. She walks on the screen, you're like, okay, here we are. And the risk in a situation like this is to do too much. You know, the stakes are very, very high. She's handed a difficult hand to play. I mean, she's arguing not to save her own daughter and is able to spin that underplaying and gravitas into, like, she makes some very good points and is a very credible person that we care about and we know cares about Rebecca, even though she's making the argument that she's making, and is able to show all of the emotion without having to like spit tears. And, you know, come on, CCH Pounder. Obviously, you get the OOPSY. Congratulations.
You know, I think it's that gravitas that might actually have kept her from being CJ on the West Wing, because one of the things I love about CJ is that she still has a little bit of like goofy youth to her as well. And I think that, though I don't know if that was written originally, but I think that's one of the things I love about CJ. And I don't know that you would get that color as loud and clear in a Pounder performance.
Well, it would definitely be a very different character. CJ would have been a different character. CJ, I think, would have lived somewhere between Toby and Leo. And it would have been, you know, because you have all of Leo's gravitas with some of Toby's like soulfulness and darkness. It would have been very interesting. But
just as an aside,
is also very funny. Like, she had some really funny stuff in The Shield.
That's why casting, I think, is an underrated importance. You know, there are hundreds of thousands of talented actors who could absolutely destroy in the best possible way any role, but it's that specific actor and that specific alchemy between actors that makes it good. We'll stay on this analogy of the West Wing. Watch the reunion special. What's his name?
Sterling K. Brown.
Sterling K. Brown is absolutely a phenomenal actor in everything he does and brings such a weight to the role of Leo, and does it beautifully in that reunion, but it's not the same.
It's and I think there also becomes a sort of shark eating its own snake eating its own tail. It'd be difficult for a shark to do it. In that you write the pilot and you cast actors to match those characters, and then as the show goes forward, you write the characters to match the actors. because they start to influence the storylines
Totally.
and, and you can take things in different directions based on who you have as an actor. All right, let's move forward and hand out our...
You killed your podiatrist or blew the case, but you let a single tear run down your face. You're the best actor on the show.
Guys, it's time that the rightful heir of the practice throne retake said throne. I think we got to see Dylan McDermott on an episode where we talked about him using poison and personal tragedy to influence his characters and influence his life. I think he got to show all those colors this week. He got to show his love to Rebecca, show his love to his new baby, and also show defiance and fight for Rebecca against her mother while still showing compassion towards that character. And it's a color we haven't seen Bobby given lately. A lot of grays, and Dylan was able to navigate that, even having been sort of written into a corner lately. And I think that he overcame a lot of that writing in order to give just one of his better performances of the entire season this week.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. It was great to see classic Bobby back, and Dylan just nailed it. And he had to had his kid. We got to watch him watch his wife give birth to a 40-year-old. So it was a really good performance for Dylan. So congratulations, Dylan McDermott, on your oopsie. Next up,
the Tom Brady Award for being Tom Brady.
Last week's Tom Brady, which was, remind me?
Tom Brady throwing a literal bomb. Tom Brady.
Oh, I can't wait. I haven't seen it yet.
It's up there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, Keith. I'm sorry, I don't live on our Instagram. This week, I would like to see Tom Brady having a baby being delivered by Pounder. Tom Brady.
Tom Brady having a baby delivered by CCH Pounder. Tom Brady. That's going to be a lot of work. Excellent. All right. Congratulations,
While
Tom
you're
Brady.
packing up. Well, you've already packed.
Having a baby being delivered by CCH Pounder, Tom Brady. There's only one more thing to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to announce how many spare tires this episode gets.
So I thought this was a episode of The Practice firing on all cylinders. There was a huge table set last week, and I think for the most part, we followed that up successfully. I got a couple of things, and one of them is I felt like the crossover portion was totally unnecessary and sort of wasted, right? Like you'd think they could just use that as the sort of focus, but I guess it continues, right? Because we didn't really get any sort of resolution.
You realize next week on Oops, we're doing an episode of Boston Public.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. We're good. We got a crossover's got to go both ways.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, then I'll cut it a little more slack because it just felt a little like overshadowed by the huge drama happening over in the other situation. And aside from awesome chemistry between Cameron and, I'm sorry, the other gentleman.
Chi McBride.
Yeah. The story just seemed sort of like, okay. But now knowing that I'm going to cut it some slack. Still, like I had mentioned earlier, I thought we really traversed some really delicate waters, discussing religion, discussing patients' rights, discussing, we even had a baby. And I tell you what, that could have been a Bobby McRambo scene that just seemed totally out of nowhere. And though, yes, it was a little ridiculous, it didn't feel that way. In the sort of heightened sense of the world and where we've been all episode, it felt, I was into it, also handled deftly by some incredible acting across the board. Did we have some major oversights like no paramedics being on the scene and the baby being a full-grown baby and being no umbilical cord? And let me tell you, that's not just like us nitpicking. They show the baby's belly when it comes out. There's nothing attached to it.
Looks like mine.
Yeah. So there were some things that keep it from being like top of the chain, but I enjoyed it. I'm willing to fudge my numbers should Keith highlight anything that I've overlooked, but I'm going to give it a solid 8.17 spare tires.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah, no, I agree with you on all of that. I agree with you. I really liked how deftly they handled the sort of religious story. I liked that we had such super high stakes. CCH Pounder coming in and playing Rebecca's mother, like what a great thing to have there. I liked all of that. I agree with you that the crossover definitely feels shoehorned. It feels shoehorned in. It's not really realistic that they would even bother with that case at this particular time, because the natural situation is they're like, hey, buddy, who I know from a long time ago, sorry, my office blew up. My best friend is dying in the hospital. I'm pregnant. Here's a referral to a guy who's available, because it's a little bit silly.
Yeah, yes. Like Lindsay or Lucy should be at home resting, and Cameron and Jimmy should be at the hospital with
Rebecca.
Eugene. Although you only are allowed one person in ICU, although that's refuted in the end when they're all there.
Right. And and look, I get it that
TV.
They did sort of address it by saying like, hey, let's distract ourselves. We can't do anything about it. Like, I get it. And yes, but like it is a little shoehorned, and the stakes of that case felt so low compared to the stakes of the other case. I think that's what made it feel more shoehorned, was that like, who gives a shit? Like this, and it's a little more complicated once we get into the real situation, but like, let's face it, you're defending a client who should have been fired. I'm sorry. Teacher is having an affair with a student, and another teacher knows about it. I don't care if he's your friend. I don't care if you're trying to talk him out of it. I don't care if whatever. Sorry, you have a duty to report. It's not like reporting child abuse when you see it. It actually is reporting child abuse. And technically on the show, she's 18, but who cares? She's a student. It doesn't matter. So, and I believe that teachers have a duty to report legally on top of just ethically. So fuck him. He should have been fired. Yeah, the baby in the courtroom, it's fun. It was surprising. I was surprised by it. And that part of it was fun. I liked sort of the symbolism of being born in the courtroom from a parent of, with two lawyers for parents. It does a little bit feel like a missed opportunity that we could have made the pregnancy a whole story in itself. But we have another one, so we'll see what happens with that. So I will say, though, they did give away that she was going to have the baby earlier in the episode. Because if you're paying really close attention, which Lord knows we aren't.
I am not.
There was a little throwaway line that Lindsay had in an earlier scene where she complained about back pain. Now, we know the rules of Chekhov's back pain, that you can't just drop in a random thing like that it's not going to pay off into something exciting. So it's like, it's Chekhov's guns, Chekhov's cough, Chekhov's back pain, whatever. If somebody coughs, they're going to die. If somebody has back pain, they're going to have a baby or something crazy. So if you're paying attention, you knew that was coming.
Uh-oh.
And now we're going to, you do that every time.
I thought for sure I turned it off too this time.
No,
it's funny too, because I would have sworn up and down, especially knowing how David E. Kelly likes to write a huge season finale. Let's go to oh my God, what's the name of that baseball field?
Oh,
the Green Monster.
The Reds... I'm not helping
Boston,
you. You're the baseball fan, not me.
Oh my God, Fenway Park. Oh my God.
There it is.
I thought for sure we were closing the season with Rebecca and Eleanor having their babies together. Like I would have put money on it, but not to be. We're going to have it in the courtroom. But I was not ready for Lindsay to have that baby today. So they got
neither
me.
was she.
That's a good point. But CC Pounder was, so.
Yeah. So Yeah, I have to give some tires.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'll take that.
Yes. No, I think you're right. I found it a very entertaining episode. And as I was, I was watching Boston Public at that same time because of both my parents were public school teachers. And of course, I like David E. Kelley. So, yeah, I'm going to give it, similar to you, I'm going to give it an 8.09 spare tires. So
that
there
should be
you go.
interesting. Calculator time.
Yeah, well, at least it won't be a tie. Okay, folks, you have listened to, once again, is it our longest episode ever? Good
no,
Lord.
last week was definitely longer.
We got to tighten this shit. Oh, my Lord. All right, if you'd like to reach out and complain about how long this damn episode was, you can reach us on Facebook and Instagram at Out of Practice Podcast. You can email us at outofpracticepodcast@gmail.com. You can check out our blog, or you can find out how the ties broke down at outofpracticepodcast.blogspot.com. Do us a huge favor. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other service. Just let us know. It would really help us build our audience. This episode of the Out of Practice Podcast was brought to you by generous donations from our founding sponsors, Jorge Navoa, Jennifer Masanova, Leanne Wrights, and Cloud Lover 69.
If you would like to join them, you can do so by clicking in the show notes, which apparently I have a lot to put in this week. I will forget, but some research Jorge did, some other stuff Jorge wants us to do, stuff. You can also click on the links in those show notes to send us some money, one-time contribution, or you know what, save that money and go ahead and donate it to a proper cause. If I happen to go into labor right now and I split open the seams of my junk, go ahead and cauterize that with some laser sounds.
Laser sounds.
Keith, go ahead and roll that amazing bumper so we can hear it one last time.
Here we go.
Always.
Let's all listen. We're not supposed to notice that you've been on the show before, but after a Super Bowl guest star, you've come charging back for more. So welcome back to the practice. We'll pretend that we don't recognize that you were here before in season 4, and you Massachusetts the scenery. First you were a judge who was a bit of a dick. Now you are a teacher who's a bit of a dick. In Silence of the Lambs you were a bit of a dick. In real life I'm sure that you're a really nice guy. Welcome back to the practice tonight.
Massachusetts. In Massachusetts. Massachusetts.
Anthony, I hope you see that someday.